The bright studio lights of the Kelly Clarkson show illuminated the polished stage as the cameras rolled, capturing the excited faces of the live audience who clapped and cheered with enthusiasm, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Kelly Clarkson, radiant and warm as ever, welcomed her viewers with her signature charm, her voice ringing out with practiced ease, setting a light-hearted tone for what was supposed to be an uplifting and entertaining segment. The guest of honor, Cameron Diaz, stepped onto the stage with an effortless grace, her signature blonde hair glinting under the lights, her smile as wide as ever, and her confident stride drawing immediate applause. The two women hugged, exchanged pleasantries, and for a few brief moments, it seemed like the episode would proceed like any other, filled with laughter, camaraderie, and perhaps some light-hearted banter about films, life, and motherhood. But beneath the surface, tensions were already simmering. Diaz, known for her outspoken nature and unfiltered opinions, had arrived at the show harboring frustrations from a recent interview that had misquoted her, and though she tried to keep her composure, there was an edge to her demeanor that even Kelly couldn't miss. The opening minutes ticked by, the conversation light and breezy, but then, as if drawn by fate toward inevitable conflict, Kelly brought up a topic that ignited the fuse: Hollywood's treatment of aging actresses and the choices Cameron had made to step away from the limelight. Cameron's smile faltered for the briefest of moments, a flicker of something darker passing behind her blue eyes as she shifted in her seat, her body language subtly tense. Kelly, ever the enthusiastic host, pressed on, perhaps unaware that her well-meaning question had touched a nerve. She spoke about admiration for Cameron's decision, but added a comment about walking away when offers dried up, an offhand remark that landed like a slap. The audience's reaction was polite, but Cameron's laugh was hollow, her eyes narrowing as she leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to signal the change in mood. She began to respond, measured at first, speaking about the importance of self-worth and choosing family and health over fame, but as she spoke, the emotion crept into her words, her frustration at being misunderstood boiling to the surface. Kelly tried to interject, attempting to lighten the mood, but her interruptions only served to fuel the growing fire. Cameron's words became sharper, her tone edged with defiance as she challenged the narrative being painted, and the atmosphere in the studio shifted palpably, the air charged with the tension of unsaid grievances and miscommunications. Kelly's smile grew strained, her usual composure tested as she tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but the tide had turned, and Cameron was not about to let it go. With each exchange, the temperature of the dialogue rose, the polite fog cracking as both women stood firm in their views. Cameron spoke passionately about double standards, about the media's obsession with youth, about how her choice to step away had been painted as weakness rather than strength. The audience, sensing the escalating conflict, had grown quieter, their earlier cheers replaced by uncertain murmurs and the occasional nervous laugh. Kelly, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and determination, pushed back, insisting that her question had come from a place of admiration and curiosity, not judgment. But the damage had been done. The energy between them had shifted from camaraderie to confrontation, and there was no easy path back as the minutes dragged on. What was meant to be a light-hearted interview had transformed into a charged debate played out in front of a national audience. Cameron, her voice rising, accused the entertainment industry of hypocrisy, her words cutting and precise, while Kelly struggled to maintain control of the segment, her own frustration beginning to show. The production crew exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the scene play out. The studio, once filled with light and laughter, now felt like the stage of a high-stakes drama, the tension thick enough to touch. Cameron, emboldened by the intensity of the moment, began to speak over Kelly, refusing to be talked over or redirected, her hands gesturing passionately as she laid bare the realities of an industry she felt had betrayed its own. Kelly, feeling The segment, slipping from her grasp, tried to regain control, raising her voice slightly. But the conversation had taken on a life of its own. Beyond the reach of friendly hosting tactics, the exchange became a verbal tug-of-war, with neither woman willing to back down, their words overlapping, the emotional weight of the discussion bearing down on the room. Cameramen adjusted their angles, capturing every expression, every clenched jaw and furrowed brow, as the clash unfolded. Kelly's attempts to de-escalate were met with Cameron's unwavering determination to be heard, to not let the moment pass without saying what she felt needed to be said. The energy in the room was electric, the audience torn between discomfort and fascination as they witnessed the rare sight of two beloved figures locked in genuine, unscripted conflict. Each point Cameron made was met with either applause from those who agreed or uneasy silence from those unsure how to react, while Kelly's retorts, though measured, carried the unmistakable edge of someone fighting to reclaim control. The segment's producer, hidden from view, debated feverishly whether to cut the feed or let the drama unfold for its undeniable ratings potential, and then came the moment that shifted the encounter from heated discussion to outright showdown. Cameron, fed up with being interrupted and feeling her views were being twisted, rose from her seat, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, the sound punctuating the charged silence of the room. Her expression was one of fierce resolve, her voice steady but filled with emotion as she declared that she would not sit through another interview where she felt disrespected or misrepresented. The audience gasped, some in shock, others in sympathy, as Kelly, momentarily stunned, stood as well, holding out a hand in a futile gesture of peacemaking. Cameron shook her head, her decision made, her body language unyielding as she turned to leave the stage. The camera operators followed her retreat, their lenses capturing every determined step as she walked off, leaving behind a trail of tension and stunned silence. Kelly, left standing alone on the stage, took a deep breath, composing herself as best she could in the aftermath of the dramatic exit. The live audience sat frozen, the earlier energy drained from the room, replaced by the heavy weight of what had just transpired. Kelly addressed them with a mix of regret and professionalism, acknowledging the difficult turn the interview had taken and thanking them for their understanding. Her voice wavered only slightly, betraying the emotional toll the encounter had taken. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled, debating how to handle the situation, whether to cut the segment from the broadcast or lean into the controversy that was sure to dominate headlines. The tension in the studio remained thick, the air heavy with the echoes of words that could not be unsaid, as Kelly tried to salvage what was left of the show, moving on to the next segment with practiced grace but a heart still pounding from the confrontation. Meanwhile, Cameron exited the building, her face a mask of frustration and resolve as she ignored the flashing cameras and shouted questions of waiting paparazzi. Her team followed closely, their faces tight with concern as they ushered her into a waiting car, the door slamming shut with finality. Inside the vehicle, Cameron took a moment to collect herself, staring out at the city she once adored, her mind racing with the events that had just unfolded. She felt both liberated and burdened, proud for standing her ground but weary from the battle. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the studio, the chaos, and the unresolved questions that would soon dominate social media and entertainment news. Cameramen and reporters shouted after her, but she gave them nothing more, determined to control the narrative of her own life from this point forward. Back inside, Kelly met briefly with her producers, their voices low but urgent as they discussed damage control, possible statements, and how best to address the incident publicly. The mood was one of shock, disappointment, and reluctant acceptance that the moment could not be undone. Kelly, ever the professional, prepared herself for the inevitable media storm, knowing that every word, every gesture, every expression from the segment would be dissected and debated endlessly in the days to come. She felt a mix of regret for how things had escalated and frustration that a genuine conversation had spiraled so far beyond her control. The remainder of the show felt surreal, a blur of forced smiles and scripted lines, as everyone involved grappled with the fallout of a moment that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. The news of Cameron Diaz's dramatic departure from the Kelly Clarkson show spread like wildfire, igniting social media platforms, online tabloids, and entertainment news outlets within minutes. Hashtags like #Cameron Diaz Walkout, #Kelly Show Drama, and #Hollywood Clash began trending worldwide as viewers, fans, and critics weighed in with their opinions, speculations, and hot takes. Clips of the confrontation were clipped, edited, and reposted countless times, each one dissected for tone, intent, and hidden meaning. Some sided with Cameron, applauding her for standing up against what they perceived as yet another example of how strong women in the industry are often cornered and misunderstood. Others sympathized with Kelly, believing she had tried her best to manage a conversation that spiraled beyond her control. Opinion pieces sprang up like mushrooms after a storm, analyzing not only the incident itself, but what it said about celebrity culture, media responsibility, and the complex dynamics between public figures in the spotlight. Producers from other talk shows watched the situation unfold, some cringing at the fallout, others quietly noting the explosive ratings potential of unfiltered, unscripted moments like this. And while the world debated, both Cameron and Kelly remained silent for a time, each grappling privately with the emotional and professional aftermath of their very public clash. Cameron retreated from the public eye for several days, her team carefully managing inquiries and shielding her from the relentless paparazzi that camped outside her home, hoping for a glimpse or a statement. Inside the sanctuary of her house, Cameron reflected on what had happened, replaying the conversation in her mind, wondering if she could have handled things differently, but ultimately reaffirming her belief that she had spoken her truth. Friends and colleagues reached out privately, some offering support, others gently advising caution about how the incident might impact future opportunities. But Cameron, ever independent, felt no regret about refusing to sit quietly through what she perceived as disrespect. In those quiet days, she penned a thoughtful statement, one that would eventually be released through her official channels, carefully crafted to express her perspective without further fueling the fire. She spoke of the importance of authenticity, the challenges women face when they refuse to conform to expectations, and her hope that the conversation might inspire more empathy and understanding rather than division. The statement, when it finally dropped, was met with praise from many quarters, though it also rekindled debates that had barely begun to simmer down. Kelly, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. As the host of a beloved daytime show known for its warmth and positivity, she found herself in unfamiliar territory, navigating the choppy waters of controversy and public scrutiny. Her team worked around the clock, crafting messaging, reaching out to media allies, and preparing for the inevitable onslaught of interview requests, panel discussions, and late-night monologues that would mention the incident. Kelly herself wrestled with conflicting emotions: disappointment, frustration, and a deep desire to set the record straight. She replayed the segment over and over, trying to pinpoint where things had gone wrong, where she might have phrased something differently, or intervened sooner to de-escalate. When she finally addressed the situation publicly, she did so with characteristic grace and honesty, acknowledging the intensity of the moment, expressing respect for Cameron, and emphasizing her commitment to creating a space where all guests felt safe and heard. Her statement was measured, heartfelt, and well-received, helping to steady the ship and refocus attention on the positive work she hoped to continue doing. But the incident's ripple effects extended far beyond the two women at the center of the storm. Media commentators used the clash as a springboard to explore deeper issues: the pressures of live television, the challenges of navigating complex topics in soundbite-driven formats, and the delicate balance between authenticity and diplomacy. Some pundits criticize the entertainment industry as a whole, arguing that it thrives on conflict while pretending to value harmony. Others praise both women for their honesty and passion, noting that moments like these, though uncomfortable, can spark important conversations about respect, agency, and the human cost of fame. Meanwhile, fan communities debated endlessly, their social media threads filled with heated arguments, thoughtful reflections, and inevitably, memes that distilled the drama into pithy one-liners and looping GIFs. The incident became more than just a clash between two celebrities. It became a cultural touchstone, a lens through which people examine their own beliefs about gender, power, and the right to speak one's mind behind closed doors. Producers of The Kelly Clarkson Show held long, tense meetings, analyzing every aspect of what had occurred, from the framing of the initial questions to the handling of the escalating tension. They reviewed footage, studied audience reactions, and debated policy changes to prevent future segments from spiraling out of control. Some advocated for stricter pre-interview guidelines and rehearsed responses, while others argued that the raw, unscripted nature of live television was part of its magic and should not be stifled. Kelly herself took part in these discussions, listening thoughtfully, offering input, and ultimately guiding the team toward a strategy that balanced preparedness with authenticity. The incident, she insisted, should not lead to a sanitized, lifeless show, but rather to a more mindful approach that respected both the guest and the audience. The process was exhausting, emotional, and at times divisive, but it ultimately strengthened the team's resolve to learn, grow, and continue creating content that mattered. Cameron, for her part, emerged from the eye of the storm with her spirit intact, if somewhat bruised by the ordeal. She used the unexpected spotlight to champion causes she cared about, lending her voice to initiatives that supported women's empowerment, mental health, and media literacy. Interviews followed this time on her terms, where she reflected on the incident, clarified her views, and shared her hopes for a more compassionate and respectful discourse in the industry. The experience, while harrowing in the moment, became a catalyst for personal growth and renewed purpose. Cameron reconnected with fans who admired her authenticity, with colleagues who appreciated her courage, and with herself, reaffirming the values that had guided her decision to step away from Hollywood in the first place. She approached each opportunity with renewed clarity, determined to use her platform not for self-defense, but for positive change, and in doing so, transformed a moment of conflict into a powerful force for good. In time, the media frenzy began to subside, the headlines giving way to newer stories, fresher controversies, and the ever-churning cycle of celebrity news. But the memory of that day lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it, the raw emotion, the unfiltered honesty, the stark reminder that even in the polished world of talk shows, real human moments can break through. Kelly and Cameron, though forever linked by that clash, moved forward on their separate paths, each wiser, stronger, and more attuned to the complexities of public life. The incident became a case study in journalism schools, a topic of discussion in media ethics classes, and a point of reflection for aspiring hosts and entertainers who hope to navigate the spotlight with grace. And though both women would go on to new projects, new adventures, and new challenges, that singular, fiery encounter remained a defining moment, a testament to the power and peril of speaking one's truth under the glare of the world's gaze.